The rattling cough that racked Abigail Vaughn's body as she stumbled down the dusty main street of Cottonwood Springs nearly brought her to her knees. She clutched her tattered shawl tighter around her shoulders against the autumn chill of 1879, though it did little to ward off the wind that whistled between the weathered buildings of the frontier town. Her fever burned hot, making the world around her waver like a mirage, but she had no choice but to continue her desperate journey to Maxwell's general store and apothecary. Behind her in their small one-room cabin on the edge of town lay her father, his breathing labored and skin pale as the bedsheets. The influenza that had swept through their household had claimed her mother just 3 days prior. Abigail was determined it would not take her father too. The bell above the door jingled as she entered Maxwell's, the familiar scent of coffee beans, tobacco, and medicinal herbs filling her nostrils. She made her way directly to the counter where old Mr. Maxwell stood organizing bottles of tinctures and tonics. "Miss Vaughn," he greeted her with concern etching deep lines around his eyes, "you should not be out of bed in your condition." "I need more of Dr. Fisher's tonic," she rasped, placing her last coins on the counter with trembling fingers. "For my father." "He's gotten worse, and a fit of coughing interrupted her words. Mr. Maxwell counted the coins and frowned. "I'm sorry, Miss Vaughn, but this isn't enough. The price has gone up since the last shipment. Railroad troubles have made everything scarcer." Abigail stared at the insufficient pile of coins, her vision blurring with tears of frustration and fever. "Please, Mr. Maxwell, my father won't last another night without it. I can clean your store or mend, or I already settled it." The deep voice from behind her made Abigail turn so quickly she had to grip the counter to keep from falling. A tall man stood just inside the doorway, removing his hat to reveal sun-streaked brown hair and eyes the color of whiskey. Dust covered his denim pants, and the worn leather of his boots spoke of many miles on horseback. The star pinned to his vest caught the light as he stepped forward. "Marshal Hawkins," Mr. Maxwell acknowledged with a nod. "Heath Xander, actually, just arrived in town." The man corrected, approaching the counter. "The marshal position is temporary until they find someone permanent." He looked down at Abigail, his expression softening at the sight of her feverish face. "I was behind you on the street, madam, heard about your situation." "The medicine you need, put it on my account, Maxwell." "I cannot accept charity," Abigail protested weakly, though she swayed on her feet as she said it. "It's not charity," Heath replied, reaching into his pocket and producing a folded paper. "Town's looking for a schoolteacher. Notice says the previous one left for Denver last month. I take it you can read and write." Abigail nodded, confusion momentarily replacing her desperation. "I taught at a school back east before coming west with my parents. Then consider it an advance on your first month's wages." He handed the notice to Mr. Maxwell. "Get her the medicine she needs, and something for herself too. Looks like she's fighting the same illness." Mr. Maxwell nodded and turned to prepare the medicines while Heath gently guided Abigail to a chair by the pot-bellied stove. She sank into it gratefully, the world spinning around her. "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Heath's eyes held hers for a long moment before he answered. "My sister died of fever 3 years ago. No one would extend credit for medicine she needed." His jaw tightened at the memory. "I was away driving cattle when it happened, by the time I returned." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. "I'm sorry," Abigail murmured. "Don't be sorry. Just get better and teach our children their letters." He smiled then, a warm expression that transformed his weather-beaten face. "Cottonwood Springs needs educated folks to build something lasting." Mr. Maxwell returned with 2 packages wrapped in brown paper. "The larger one is for your father, 2 doses daily. The smaller is for you." Same instructions. Heath paid for the medicines and helped Abigail to her feet. "My horse is outside. I'll take you home." The protest died on Abigail's lips as another coughing fit seized her. When she could breathe again, she found herself being guided outside to where a magnificent chestnut stallion waited patiently. "I'm staying at the boarding house," Heath explained as he helped her into the saddle before mounting behind her. Just point me in the direction of your place." Abigail leaned back against his solid warmth, too exhausted to maintain proper decorum. "West edge of town, small cabin with the blue door." As Heath guided the horse through town, Abigail felt consciousness slipping away, the combination of fever and relief proving too much for her weakened body. The last thing she remembered was the steady beat of Heath's heart against her back and his strong arm keeping her securely in the saddle. The next week passed in a blur of fever dreams and lucid moments. Abigail would later learn that Heath had not only brought her home, but had arranged for the doctor to visit both her and her father. He had paid Mrs. Holloway from the boarding house to bring meals and tend to them. When Abigail finally regained enough strength to sit up and take stock of their situation, she discovered that her father had turned the corner and was recovering, albeit slowly. "That marshal's been by every day to check on us," her father informed her, his voice still weak but his eyes clearer than they had been in days. "Brought firewood yesterday, wouldn't take a penny for it." Abigail smoothed the quilt over her lap, conflicted emotions churning within her. "I need to thank him properly and repay him." "He doesn't want repayment, Abby. Some men just do good because it's right." But Abigail's pride wouldn't allow her to leave such a debt unsettled. As soon as she could stand without dizziness overtaking her, she put on her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had seen better days but was clean and carefully mended, and made her way to the sheriff's office. She found Heath at the desk, bent over paperwork, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up when the door opened, surprise and then pleasure crossing his face when he saw her. "Miss Vaughn, you're looking better." He stood quickly, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. "Thanks to you, Marshal Xander." She remained standing, her hands clasped tightly before her. "I've come to properly thank you for your kindness and to discuss repayment." Heath shook his head. "As I said before, take the teaching position and we'll call it even." "I intend to. In fact, I came from speaking with the town council. They've offered me the position starting next week." She took a deep breath. "But that doesn't settle what I owe you for the doctor's visits and Mrs. Holloway's help." Heath came around the desk, his expression serious. "Miss Vaughn, I didn't help you expecting anything in return. Nevertheless, I pay my debts." She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze directly. "If not money, then perhaps I could cook for you. I've been told my stew is quite good." Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "Are you offering to be my personal cook, Miss Vaughn?" A blush heated her cheeks. "Just until I've worked off what I owe." Heath considered her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. One meal this Sunday after church, but not because you owe me, because I'd enjoy the company. I've been in town 3 weeks and the only conversation I get is from drunks in the cells and Mrs. Holloway asking if I want more potatoes at supper." Abigail couldn't help but smile. Sunday it is, then. The week that followed was filled with preparations for her new role as teacher. The schoolhouse was a simple one-room building on the north end of town, with rows of wooden benches and desks for about 20 students. The town council had provided a small cabin adjacent to it for her use, which meant she and her father could move from their remote location to something more suitable for his continued recovery. Heath helped with the move, arriving early Saturday morning with his wagon and 2 other men he'd recruited to assist. Abigail was struck by how easily he took charge, efficiently directing the loading of their few possessions and ensuring her father was comfortable for the short journey. "You didn't have to do all this," she said as they unloaded the last of their belongings at the new cabin. "Wanted to make sure you were settled before your first day of teaching." Heath set down a crate of books beside the small iron stove. "Besides, it gave me an excuse to avoid paperwork for a morning." Her father chuckled from his chair by the window. "If you're avoiding work, young man, you could stay for lunch. Abby made fresh bread this morning." Heath's eyes met Abigail's, seeking permission. When she nodded, he smiled. "Reckon I could be persuaded to stay a bit longer." Lunch stretched into the afternoon as Heath helped arrange furniture and hang the few family pictures Abigail had brought from the east. Her father, still weak but improving daily, entertained them with stories from his days as a young man in Boston. Abigail found herself watching Heath, the way his hands moved with surprising gentleness when handling her mother's china teacup. How his laugh came easily and warmly, the thoughtful way he listened to her father's tales. When he finally left as the sun began to sink toward the horizon, Abigail walked him to his wagon. "Thank you again," she said softly, "for everything." Heath looked down at her, something unreadable in his expression. "My pleasure, Miss Vaughn." "Abigail," she corrected him. "After all you've done, I think you've earned the right to use my given name." "Abigail," he repeated, the words sounding different in his deep voice. "Then I'm Heath to you?" He climbed into his wagon and tipped his hat to her before flicking the reins. Abigail watched him until he disappeared around the bend. A strange, fluttering sensation in her chest that she wasn't entirely sure was related to her recent illness. Sunday dinner at Abigail's new cabin was a simple affair, but she had taken special care with every detail. The table was set with her mother's best tablecloth. The stew had simmered all morning until the beef was tender, and she had even managed to find late-season blackberries for a cobbler. Her father had excused himself to rest after they ate, leaving Abigail and Heath alone at the table with cups of coffee between them. "That was the best meal I've had since leaving Texas," Heath said appreciatively. "Mrs. Holloway tries, but her idea of seasoning is a pinch of salt if you're lucky." Abigail laughed. "Where in Texas are you from?" "Hill country outside San Antonio. My father ran cattle there until he passed. My brother took over the ranch." Heath's fingers traced the rim of his cup. "I wasn't much for ranching, preferred to work with the law." "And that brought you to Cottonwood Springs," he nodded. "I was deputy in 3 different towns before taking this temporary post. Town council says they'll decide in a month whether to offer me the permanent position." "Do you want it?" Abigail asked, genuinely curious. "Cottonwood Springs must seem quiet compared to Texas." Heath's gaze settled on her face. "It's growing on me." The way he said it made her heart skip a beat, and she busied herself with clearing the plates to hide the blush she felt rising to her cheeks. "What about you?" Heath asked, standing to help her. "What brought an educated Eastern woman to this dusty corner of the territory?" Abigail sighed as she placed the dishes in the wash basin. "My father's health. The doctors in Boston said the dry air might help his lungs. And my mother always dreamed of seeing the West." She paused, memories of her mother's excited planning for their journey bringing a bittersweet ache. She didn't get to enjoy it for long. Heath's hand covered hers briefly. "I'm sorry, life continues," she said simply. "We adapt. That we do." His eyes held a shared understanding of loss that needed no further words. The weeks that followed settled into a comfortable rhythm. Abigail taught during the days, growing to love her students despite the challenges of teaching children of varying ages and abilities in one classroom. Heath maintained order in the small but occasionally rowdy town, dealing with everything from drunken cowboys to minor disputes between neighbors. They began to cross paths regularly at church on Sundays, in the general store, on the streets as Heath made his rounds. Each time they exchanged more than just pleasantries, their conversations growing longer, more personal. Abigail found herself looking forward to these encounters more than she cared to admit. October gave way to November, and the air turned sharper with the promise of winter. On the first truly cold morning, Abigail arrived at the schoolhouse to find Heath stacking firewood beside the building. "What's all this?" she asked, her breath forming clouds in the frosty air. "Noticed your woodpile was getting low," he answered, splitting another log with efficient force. "Thought I'd replenish it before the first snow." "That's very kind but unnecessary. The town council moves slower than molasses in January," Heath finished for her with a grin. "Don't worry, they're paying for the wood. I just offered to deliver it." Abigail wrapped her shawl tighter around herself. "Well, thank you. The children will appreciate a warm classroom." Heath set down his axe, wiping his brow despite the cold. "Speaking of which, I heard about your plans for the Christmas pageant. Ambitious for such a small town." "The children deserve something special," she replied. "Many of them have never experienced a proper Christmas celebration." Heath nodded thoughtfully. "Need any help with it? I'm not much for singing, but I can build things. Sets, props, whatever you need." Abigail smiled, warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with her heavy cloak. I would appreciate that very much. The Christmas pageant became their shared project over the next weeks. Heath would come to the schoolhouse after hours, building simple backdrops and props while Abigail worked on costumes and rehearsed the children. Her father often joined them, his health improving enough that he could sit comfortably and help with painting scenery. These evenings were filled with laughter and easy conversation. Abigail learned about Heath's childhood on the Texas ranch, his complicated relationship with his older brother, his dreams of eventually becoming a circuit judge. In turn, she shared stories of her life in Boston, her love of literature, her brief engagement to a banker's son that had ended when she chose to accompany her parents west instead of staying to marry. You regret it? Heath asked one evening as they worked side by side painting stars on a backdrop. Leaving him behind, Abigail considered the question seriously. No, Robert was a good man, but we wanted different things. He couldn't understand why I would choose family over security and position. She dipped her brush in the silver paint. Looking back, I don't think we would have been happy together. Heath was quiet for a moment, concentrating on his work. Some men don't understand that a woman's heart and mind are her own, that she has to follow her own path. Abigail glanced at him, surprised by the insight. And you understand this? His eyes met hers, serious and warm. My mother taught me that lesson. She chose my father over a wealthy suitor, left a comfortable life in St. Louis to live in a one-room cabin in Texas. Never regretted it a day in her life, she said, because she followed her heart. The intensity of his gaze made Abigail's heart beat faster, and she looked away first, returning her attention to the stars. Your mother sounds like a remarkable woman. She was. There was pride and old grief in his voice. You remind me of her sometimes, same quiet strength. The compliment left Abigail speechless, a pleasant warmth spreading through her chest as they continued working in comfortable silence. As December progressed, the entire town began to buzz with excitement for the upcoming pageant. Parents stopped Abigail on the street to thank her for giving their children something special to look forward to. Even Mr. Maxwell donated candy and oranges for the children's Christmas stockings. A week before the pageant, the first heavy snow of the season blanketed Cottonwood Springs. Abigail woke to a transformed world, the usual browns and grays of the landscape replaced by pristine white. She hurried through her morning routine, eager to reach the schoolhouse early to light the stove before her students arrived. The bitter cold made her eyes water as she trudged through knee-deep snow, her boots insufficient for the task. Halfway to the school, she heard the jingle of harness bells and turned to see Heath approaching in a sleigh. Need a ride, teacher? He called, pulling the horses to a stop beside her. Bless you, she breathed, accepting his hand to climb into the sleigh. He tucked a thick buffalo robe around her legs, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary. Couldn't have you arriving with frozen feet, he said, his smile visible beneath his frosted mustache. What kind of lawman would I be if I let our teacher catch her death in a snowstorm? A very poor one indeed, she agreed, returning his smile. Though I suspect your concern goes beyond your official duties. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, at her boldness, and something else she couldn't quite name. You suspect correctly, Miss Vaughn. The sleigh ride to the school was brief but magical. Fresh snow sparkled in the morning sunlight, and their breath mingled in white clouds above the buffalo robe. Heath kept the horses at a gentle pace, clearly in no hurry to end their time together. When they arrived, he insisted on entering the schoolhouse first to light the stove and ensure it was warming properly before the students arrived. Abigail watched him move efficiently around the room, struck by how natural his presence felt in her domain. Thank you for the ride, she said as he prepared to leave, and she gestured around the now warming room. Heath paused at the door, studying her face. Abigail, he began, then seemed to reconsider his words. I'd like to call on you properly. Not just for pageant preparation or neighborly assistance, if that would be agreeable to you. Her heart leaped at his formal request, though she kept her expression composed. It would be very agreeable, Heath. His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Good, that's good. He cleared his throat, suddenly seeming less sure of himself than the confident lawman she'd come to know. I'll see you this evening, then, for the rehearsal. After he left, Abigail found herself smiling as she arranged her lesson materials, a pleasant anticipation building inside her for whatever the evening might bring. The Christmas pageant was a triumph beyond anyone's expectations. The children performed their parts with enthusiasm, if not perfect precision. The modest decorations Heath had helped create transformed the schoolhouse into a magical space, and even the crankiest old-timers in town found themselves humming along to the carols. Afterward, as parents collected their excited children and townspeople lingered to compliment the performance, Abigail found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. This was what she had hoped to build: not just education, but community, connection, shared joy. Heath appeared at her side as the crowd thinned, looking handsome in a clean black coat and pressed shirt. "You've worked a miracle here," he said quietly. "Look at them all, miners, ranchers, shopkeepers, all coming together. That's your doing." "We did it together," she corrected him, impulsively touching his arm. "I couldn't have managed any of this without your help." His eyes held hers, and for a breathless moment, Abigail thought he might kiss her right there in the schoolhouse. Instead, he reached into his pocket and produced a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with a red ribbon. "Merry Christmas, Abigail." She took it, surprised, "but Christmas is still 3 days away." "Open it anyway," he encouraged her, a rare nervousness in his expression. Carefully, she untied the ribbon and unwrapped the paper to reveal a small leather-bound book. Opening it, she gasped softly, "Pride and Prejudice, my favorite." She looked up at him in wonder. "How did you know?" "You mentioned it once when we were talking about books you wished you had for the school." He shifted slightly, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I sent away for it, wanted you to have something that was just for you, not for teaching." The thoughtfulness of the gift touched her deeply. That he had remembered a casual comment, had gone to such effort for her pleasure, it spoke volumes. "I have something for you too," she admitted, "though it's not wrapped." She moved to her desk and removed a package from the drawer. "I was going to give it to you on Christmas Day." Heath unwrapped the hand-knitted scarf with obvious appreciation, running his fingers over the deep blue wool. "It's perfect," he said, immediately wrapping it around his neck. "Did you make this?" Abigail nodded, pleased by his reaction. "During evenings when Father was asleep. It gets cold on your rounds, and your old one was rather threadbare. This is the finest gift I've received in years." The sincerity in his voice made her blush. They stood there a moment, surrounded by the remnants of the pageant pine boughs and candle stubs, paper stars and the lingering echoes of children's voices, until Heath finally broke the silence. "May I walk you home? It's still snowing." The walk through the snowy night was like something from a dream. Lanterns glowed in windows, casting golden light onto the pristine snow. Their footsteps crunched in perfect rhythm, and the companionable silence between them felt comfortable, expectant. At her door, Heath hesitated. "Abigail, He seemed to struggle with his words, unusual for a man who typically spoke his mind plainly. "These past months, getting to know you, yes," she interrupted softly, saving him from his uncharacteristic awkwardness. "For me too." Relief and something deeper crossed his face. Slowly, giving her every chance to step away, he leaned down. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, his lips cold from the winter air but warming quickly against hers. Abigail's heart pounded as she allowed herself to lean into him, her hands finding his shoulders. When they separated, Heath's eyes were filled with a warmth that chased away the December chill. "I'll call on you tomorrow evening, if I may." "I'll expect you at 6, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Father will be pleased to have company for dinner." Heath touched her cheek once more before reluctantly stepping away. "Until tomorrow, then." Abigail watched him walk back toward town, his tall figure gradually disappearing into the curtain of falling snow. Only when he was completely out of sight did she enter her cabin, pressing her fingers to her lips where she could still feel the imprint of his kiss. Christmas Day arrived with clear skies and brilliant sunshine that made the snow-covered landscape glitter like diamonds. After church services, where Abigail and Heath sat side by side, prompting knowing smiles from several townspeople, they joined a community dinner at the hotel. The entire town seemed to be in attendance, from the wealthiest rancher to the poorest miner, all sharing in the holiday feast. As they ate, Abigail couldn't help but marvel at how much her life had changed in just a few months. From desperate illness and near poverty to a respected position, a comfortable home, her father's improving health, and now this growing connection with Heath that made her heart lighter than it had been in years. After dinner, Heath invited Abigail and her father to join him for a sleigh ride. Her father, still easily fatigued but much improved, declared after a short while that he'd prefer to visit with his friends at the hotel and insisted the young people continue without him. Alone together, Heath guided the horses out of town and along the river where bare cottonwood trees stood like sentinels against the blue sky. He brought the sleigh to a stop at a particularly beautiful viewpoint where the frozen river curved around a stand of pines. "I've been thinking a lot about permanence lately," Heath said as they gazed at the winter landscape, "about putting down roots." Abigail glanced at him, curious about this philosophical turn. "Have you decided to accept the permanent marshal position?" "I have." He turned to face her fully, taking her gloved hands in his. "The town council made the offer official yesterday, but that's not why I've been thinking about permanence." Her heart began to beat faster as he continued. "I came to Cottonwood Springs looking for nothing more than temporary work. I never expected to find a place that felt like home or," his voice softened, "someone who would give me a reason to stay." "Heath," Abigail breathed, hardly daring to hope what his words might mean. He released her hands only to reach into his coat pocket. What he withdrew made her gasp, a simple gold ring with a small pearl at its center. "I know it's fast," he said, his eyes never leaving hers, "but when you know something is right, time doesn't much matter. My parents knew after 2 weeks that they were meant for each other, and they had 30 happy years together." Tears pricked at Abigail's eyes as he continued. "Abigail Vaughn, you are the strongest, kindest, most remarkable woman I've ever known. From that first day in the general store when you were ready to work off your debt despite being sick as a dog yourself, I knew you were special. These months getting to know you have only confirmed what my heart suspected from the start." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Abigail. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Joy bubbled up inside her, overwhelming in its intensity. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Heath. Yes." His face broke into that sunshine smile she had come to cherish as he slipped the ring onto her finger over her glove. "It was my grandmother's," he explained. "I sent for it after the first month of knowing you." "You were that certain?" she asked, amazed. "Some things you just know," he replied simply, before pulling her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and partnership. Spring came early to Cottonwood Springs in 1880, bringing with it new growth and new beginnings. Abigail and Heath were married on a perfect April day beneath the newly leafed cottonwood trees by the river. The entire town turned out for the celebration, which lasted well into the evening with dancing, feasting, and more laughter than the small frontier town had heard in many years. Abigail continued teaching, though now she returned each evening to the house Heath had purchased and expanded on the edge of town, close enough for his duties as marshal, but with enough land for a garden and, someday, room for children to play. Her father lived with them, his health continuing to improve in the clear mountain air and with the happiness of seeing his daughter so well settled. As summer approached, bringing with it the anniversary of Abigail's desperate visit to Maxwell's store, she found herself once again standing at the counter. This time, however, she was purchasing supplies for the end-of-term celebration at the school. "Hard to believe it's been almost a year," Mr. Maxwell remarked as he wrapped her purchases. "You were half dead yourself that day." "It seems like another lifetime," Abigail agreed, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach where the newest blessing of her life was just beginning to grow. As if her thoughts had summoned him, the bell above the door jingled and Heath entered, removing his hat as he spotted her. "There you are," he said, crossing to place a kiss on her cheek. "Finished your shopping?" "Just about," she replied, her heart still skipping a beat at his presence even after months of marriage. Heath nodded to Maxwell and picked up Abigail's packages. "I'll take these to the wagon for you." As they stepped outside into the sunshine, Heath's arm came around her waist, pulling her close for a moment. "Happy?" he asked, a question he still posed regularly as if to reassure himself that she had no regrets. Abigail looked up at him, taking in the features that had become so dear to her, the laugh lines at the corners of his eyes, the strong jaw now familiar beneath her fingertips, the warm gaze that never failed to make her feel cherished. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully. "And you?" "Beyond words," he said, helping her into the wagon with gentle hands. "Every morning I wake up beside you, I'm grateful for whatever twist of fate brought me to Cottonwood Springs on exactly the right day." "Divine providence," she suggested with a smile, remembering her mother's favorite phrase. "Whatever it was," Heath agreed, settling beside her on the wagon seat, "I thank God for it every day." As they drove through town toward home, Abigail reflected on the incredible journey of the past year. From desperate illness and near destitution to profound love and the promise of family, all beginning with a chance encounter and an act of kindness from a stranger who saw her need and simply said, "I already settled it." Life in the West was never easy. There would be challenges ahead: harsh winters, the occasional lawlessness that required Heath's attention, the distance from extended family, and the comforts of more established towns. But Abigail faced the future without fear, secure in the knowledge that whatever came, they would face it together. That autumn, when their daughter was born strong and healthy with her father's whiskey-colored eyes and her mother's determination, they named her Hope, a testament to the force that had sustained them through difficult times and led them to each other. And on quiet evenings, when Heath returned from his rounds to find Abigail rocking their daughter by the fire, he would still sometimes pause in the doorway just to watch them, marveling at how a simple decision to help a sick woman pay for medicine had changed the entire course of his life. "What are you thinking?" Abigail would ask, catching his contemplative gaze, and Heath would cross the room to kiss her, their daughter nestled between them, and answer with perfect honesty, "That some debts, once settled, keep paying dividends I never could have imagined." In the years that followed, Cottonwood Springs grew from a frontier outpost to a proper town with a brick schoolhouse, where Abigail continued to teach until their third child was born, a courthouse, where Heath eventually realized his dream of becoming a judge, and a community that prided itself on taking care of its own. The Xander home became known as a place of welcome, where newcomers were invited for Sunday dinners, where children gathered to hear Abigail's stories, and where no one in need was ever turned away empty-handed. It was, as Heath had once hoped for, something lasting, built on a foundation of education, justice, and most importantly, love that had begun with a simple act of kindness in a general store on a desperate autumn day.